Hey guys,
Hey, 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 hey.
we are back.
Here we are, here we are. It's been
We
a
are
while,
here.
been a hot minute. I am just Lisa, and she is
Lyrics.
Lyrics.
We've got now a hand-eye coordination going on this now. You have no idea how hard this is to do on the first try, okay?
Extremely hard.
When
And the
you
second
can
and the
do it,
third.
when you can do it, you can talk about it, all right? Guys, we're thrilled to be back on air with the Givin Trouble Show.
Yep, yep,
My
yep, yep.
Our Given Trouble show is a live, online, current affairs comedy show that we do on Facebook exclusively, but we also make some episodes available on YouTube. And today we have a very special show.
Yep, yep. So, if you haven't heard about it, let me tell you about Catapult, which is a series of COVID grants for creatives in the Caribbean. And it's being administered by Fresh Milk, which is a Barbadian arts collective, and Kingston Creative, which is, well, from Jamaica. And they're dispersing grants paid for by the American Friends of Jamaica. And these grants have gone to dozens, maybe hundreds of creatives across the region during this global pandemic when we can't make no money, man. And so we're just really grateful to them. We got this grant to do a showcase. And here we are, courtesy Catapult, doing a Caribbean comedy pivot showcase. So tell them about that, Lyrics.
Well, our pivot showcase today is really asking the question, and not facetiously at all, can comedy kill COVID? Okay, because we are comedians and COVID, coronavirus, it has thrown us all off course. You know, we're all in uncharted territory. We're all
Mm-hmm.
trying new things, new online things, new monetization techniques. And we're doing all of this with just our raw and professional talent that we are flinging at the world and hoping, to reap some
Tweet.
benefits. Yeah.
Tweet.
So today we'll be talking to some up and coming and established comedians. So we have Kess Ramsay, who is a very interesting comedian. He's been doing his the Stay at Home Dad podcast that he started recently. We're going to talk to him about that. We also have young and sexy and very interesting Mr. Jerome Richardson, 10 out of 10. He's a dancer, he's a gymnast, he's a stand up comedian. Very interesting young man. And we'll be talking to him about some of the things he's been doing to get around and cope with and maybe even take advantage of the pandemic. And we also have Simmy the Trini, who is working on a book. What's the name of the book again, Lisa?
Panic them.
Panic Dem, which I think is a wonderful name. So hopefully we get a chance to talk to her about that. I know that and talk about the limitations that we live with here in the Caribbean. Right now, she has an issue with electricity, and that's happened to us before, where we've had to change or postpone the show because there's no electricity at one of our houses. We know that life in the Caribbean, current, gone.
Current going, right? We also have our wonderful mentor, Errol Fabian, Uncle Errol, joining us, along with one of our co-conspirators. She's been in a couple of our shows and she's really been a great inspiration to us, Rhoma Spencer. And you take this one, you take the last one.
The last one is our friend from afar, Jean Paul. And I say Jean Paul as if he has some kind of French something. He living in Toronto. He's not even from Montreal.
Yes.
So, but we love him,
Trini.
and he is one of the most, I would say, active comedians that I've worked with. Very, very on it, very busy, always doing something new, something cutting edge. He's been doing some exciting work online. And also, in Toronto now, they've been having live shows, experimenting with safe outdoor spaces, very cool stuff. So we'll be talking to some interesting people today and finding out how comedy can kill COVID and what we can do to make it work.
And I want to say that we have actually, because there's so many interviews and it's such a weighty, interesting topic, we've actually brought in a pinch hitter. Her name is Dr. Suzanne Burke, and some of you might know her as a cultural studies expert. She is like the leading expert on cultural industries in the Caribbean. Like, Google it. And so she's agreed to be our co-host today, and
Yes.
we have her waiting in the wings.
Yes, and
So
you know,
yeah.
our relationship with Dr. Burke is very cash. We call her Suzzy. However, I used to call her Burkey, but I had to stop doing that. People kept getting confused.
Don't call she Burkey. Don't call she
It's like the
Burkey.
Hitler mustache, you know, you ruin a whole nickname for everybody. Nobody can use that nickname again. Even though your last name is Burke, that's so wrong.
No. But Suzanne is kind of amazing. She's, you know, one of the things we'll be talking about today is how creatives, and particularly comedians, because that's the field we're in, have sort of managed themselves as business people, because this is entrepreneurship. And because I was fortunate enough to be exposed to some of her creative entrepreneurial workshops, it changed my perspective. So this is why we have logo, we have letterhead, we have, you know, business plan, we have, you know, all these things that, like, entrepreneurial practices that we've instituted as part of our business. You know, even the fact that we have a business, like Femcom TT is a registered business partnership. And all of these things are taken out of stuff that I learned through workshops with her. So I'm like, she's like, you know what I mean?
Some serious fangirl business going on here.
Oh, for real.
The thing for you guys that I am super cool and unfazed by anything, you know. So don't worry, I'll be chill, guys. I'll be chill with you.
I totally can't chill. I am like the biggest fan girl. Like,
you have zero chill, Lisa. Like,
zero
you've never
chill.
had chill. Like, never.
I don't even know the word.
I just found mine this year, actually. So I'm feeling good about that. Y'all.
Is this shop still open, or did they close with the COVID? Because I could go and get some chill.
And get some chill? I don't know, man. I don't know, man. You have to have the password, man.
Yeah.
So all of our guests are here for our first half. They are here and on standby in studio. They are so wonderful. Simmy, Jerome, and Kess, I see you waiting in the wings there. You look beautiful. You all look very beautiful. Simmy, I love those glasses. Okay, you all will see them in a little while. First, we are gonna just briefly
bring in Dr. Burke.
Let's bring in Dr. Burke. She's here. Mm-hmm. She's wonderful. Let's bring her in. Okay, I promise I wasn't gonna fangirl, right? I'm done. Hi, Dr.
Burke. Good morning, everybody. Well, good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here.
It is.
Thank you.
Great to have you.
Yes, it's really a pleasure for you to join us. Yes. And as we begin, I shamelessly went and I graded a PDF of your paper on mapping the cultural industries in Trinidad and Tobago, and we created this slideshow to kind of just start off the conversation talking about why creative industries matter, because a lot of people doubt that I have a job,
or that it is a real job.
Right.
And one of the things I've always appreciated about you, Suzzy, is that you have always done the work that shows the value added, the tangible and the intangible value added. And I don't think a lot of people see that, notice it, are aware of it. That the work that Lisa and I do, that Simmy does, that Kess does, that Jerome does, that this work tangibly and intangibly adds to Trinidad and Tobago, and that excites me, people being aware of that, and that's the message you're pushing, and you back it up with all the facts and the information and the research that I myself am far too lazy to do.
Well, it's one of the things we do to make sure that people get a better understanding of how creativity works and why creativity matters. What would our lives be without music? I tell people, try to think of your life one day, just one day, without listening to music or reading, and then you realize the impact that it has on your life. Yeah.
Totally. But if you look at the second slide, lyrics.
Sure.
Lyrics is our technical controller.
Yes, God help us.
He do all the time.
All the time.
So as you can see, Suzanne, I stole directly from your paper. And I quoted.
You borrowed.
I quoted.
Uncredited.
Uncredited. And this, so we're talking about what is this value that we create, and the creation is in the sphere of culture, and also like actual producing, production of goods, meaning shows and videos and things like that. And we employ people. When we have a show, we hire people to, well, not paying them a lot, but we do hire people to, run the camera, do the sound. We have a person we pay to do the door. Again, not huge amounts of money, but it is still income generation.
So we add this value, and then people come and say, for example, when the grant was being given out, people were like, what creative people need grants for? That's not a real job. It have real people out here suffering. What would you say to that perspective, that attitude, Dr. Burke?
Right. Well, I mean, even when we looked at the mapping exercise that you all are quoting from here, we found that even creatives didn't see what they were doing as a job, right? So many people looked at it as a hobby. Many people looked at it as a hustle, right? And this is what we're trying to do in terms of professionalizing the inherent talent and the natural and infinite resources of the people, not just of Trinidad and Tobago, but the Caribbean, so that culture gets itself in our lives, in our everyday lives, in many ways. So you talked about what we call the instrumental value, or the things that we know, creating employment, generating income, also earning foreign exchange. We have a couple of people here who live in the diaspora, right? And if you bring them for a show, or if you go out, you also earn foreign exchange. But the other thing that culture does too is that it brands a country. So that when you think about Jamaica, and these things are intangible, you can't put, you can in terms of branding, right? But when you think of Jamaica, you may think of reggae music, you may think of Bob Marley, right? When you think of Trinidad and Tobago, you may think of Carnival, you may think of Ramlila, you may think of any of those things, right? But it means that you are inside of a brand, right? And we don't think of oil and natural gas when we think of Trinidad and Tobago, right? The average person. So that culture is also kind of tied into who we are, not just as individuals, but who we are as a nation. And then, of course, the intangible, the thing that makes you survive every day, right? So the idea that it civilizes you, it humanizes you, it connects you to each other. So we often experience culture in community with each other, right? And that is a kind of, community that you cannot kind of dislodge. So when we listen to a piece of music together, when we go to a fete together, when we sit in a cinema and see a film together, right? You come away with the same kinds of notions, and you can talk about it. Think about how you talk about cultural things with your friends, right? And that community, again, is something that we tend to not place a lot of emphasis on, but it is how we ground ourselves in ourselves, right? So those are just some examples of what culture does. It's dynamic.
So it's not just about economic value. It's about community value, value of self. I will say that when I first left Trinidad and lived in another country, that was the first time I appreciated my culture.
Yes.
Because there was a void out there, and I realized these people didn't have what I had.
Yeah.
And when I learned to share that, it added more value. It added value to my relationships, and it made me more valuable to the international group of people that I was dealing with, because it gave me more prestige. Because I came from this interesting, rich mythology with carnival, traditional carnival, and folklore, and all of this. And I had to travel to have any appreciation of that. And I think that is what you're talking about, that we don't give these things any regard. We just living and taking it for granted, you know.
Yes. I think it was George Lamming, sorry, who said you
No
become
problem.
West Indian outside of the West Indies, right? So that I think anybody who's traveled has that similar kind of experience. I remember I studied in Toronto and being on a bus stuck in traffic jam in winter. So there was heat, but the bus was crowded. And this voice just came from nowhere and it said, "Oh God, this bus real hot, boy," you know. And I knew it was a Trinidadian. And when I looked, it was a Trinidadian of European descent. So again, you know, and I leaned over and I said, "You from Trinidad?" And he said, "Yeah, nah." Right? So it's that thing. And one of the things that we often don't talk about is the language, how we express ourselves, you know. I think it is it Benjai that says how we walk, is how we talk, is how we cook, is how we dance, is how we be, you know. So
Is
that's
actually
important.
Poetry.
Before we move to bringing in the guests who are sort of chomping at the bit in the waiting room,
I love that.
I just want to touch on two things. One is business plans and those kinds of mechanisms for developing as entrepreneurs, and collaboration / trade associations. I know the document that we're referring to, you deal quite extensively with both of those things. I just wanted you to touch on them before we
move on. Okay. One of the things that we know about creatives is that they innovate. But what helps creatives to innovate is the ability to collaborate. And one of the things that the report showed was that we tend to not, creatives in Trinidad and Tobago, tended to not collaborate as much as they ought to. So we had trade associations or groups, and a trade association is just a group of like-minded people operating in the same sector, so whether it be CAN or whether it be art or whatever. And these need to be strengthened in a real sense, because it is these associations that make creatives better able to, one, arrive at a common ground in terms of what we want to do, where we want to take the sector. But it also helps when you're bargaining with government, with private sector, and those kinds of things. So you are really, in fact, better together. And one of the things we found is that trade associations were weak, right? In Trinidad and Tobago. They were nascent, many of them, even though there were people on the books, as we say, the active members were just a couple of people, you know, doing all the work. And that we find a lot across the board in Trinidad and Tobago. You know, a few people do a lot of the work, but you really have to strengthen. A really integral part of the ecology is being able to have strong trade associations. So you lobby and you make a difference. So when you look at manufacturing, there's the Manufacturers Association. They are, you know, consulted in the budget. They sit on negotiations for trade deals and so on, right? So the Chamber of Commerce and so on. Just think about that. Even though they may be competing, they are in the same association. So they know when it's time to come together, right, to advocate for common good. So you have to see yourself as an industry or a sector, not an individual. You're an individual or a firm inside of a larger whole. Right? And I think that's what people have a little problem coming to grips with. We still with the I, you know, and not we.
It's true. It's true. It's very true. And talking about collaboration, you know, we've had the opportunity to collaborate with each one of the comedians that I'm about to bring in. And I will start at the beginning with the woman who let Lisa and I into the comedy world by producing her open mic series at Kaiso Blues Cafe that we started open micing at. And that is Miss Rhea Simone, just now, I don't know.
Rhea Simone Ogis.
Rhea Simone Ogis. So
AKA Simmy the Trini.
And here she is looking gorgeous.
Good morning, everyone. Hi.
Simmy.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I definitely am out of the time lap right now. No plans to time. Hi.
Hey, great.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on, and I'm glad you can come back.
Pressure.
And
been there, seen it, know it. What the teacher.
So, Trini, we brought you in because we know that you've been doing some really interesting things during the pandemic. One of the things I've really appreciated is your honesty about the things you were struggling with, as well as your sort of like consistency online. That was very impressive to me. Would you like to touch on those things a little bit, maybe how one drove the other or vice versa?
Well, it's an odd story, but where social media is concerned, when the pandemic happened and we were no longer able to do shows the way we were accustomed to doing shows, there was very little left in the way of me being able to do events. And remember, aside from doing stand-up comedy with Holy Mike, I was trying to build my own brand, trying to work on material for myself and doing other people's events, emceeing. Everything came to a grinding halt. And I have 2 sons. I'm a single parent. So I'm at home with my children, having to teach them, having no income really, and trying to just figure out life. Social media was literally an outlet. It was the only remaining outlet. And I started to just, as you said, craft my social media in a way where I could continue to interact with people and let them know, well, look, we in this together, but we don't have to be pulling ourselves all the way down to depressed about it. Let's still have a laugh here and there. We can still talk about stuff. We can still have conversations. I do my live on a Friday night, sometimes Saturday night, the Below Clock Live.
Very late.
Where children asleep by that time, right?
I always be like, I'm going to Simmy's live. It sounds like it's be all kind of craziness and fun, and then I fall asleep 7 o'clock every night like a loser.
People is knockout, but I do it that hour deliberately because I don't share the lives after. So what happens in the live stays in the live.
Don't I know it? You know how much times I try to mark out the repeat of your life.
I don't leave the repeats up because I feel like if you go to a lime in real life and something happens, some piece of talk pass, some little slackness pass, do you get to go back to the lime the next day? No, the lime gone. You didn't come. Hard luck. You miss it.
All you can do is go talk about what happened in the life.
And make sure you ask the next time, right?
Yeah, and that's just how it is. And so what it has crafted is the late night people, the insomniacs, the single people in particular, who are also insomniacs. They come out and we have very honest conversations about sex and sexuality. We have some of the most raw and authentic. People have put me on the spot sometimes. They ask me questions and I'm like, I don't know if I should be sharing this much of myself on the social media. But
so, exciting things have been happening for you during the pandemic, clearly. Let me bring in the boys, ladies. It was ladies first, but let me bring in the boys. We have Kess Ramsay standing by. So let me bring him in, looking all cute. Hi, Kess.
Hey, Kess on the beach.
As well as Jerome, looking very intense currently. So here he is. Ooh, look down.
I'm in the live now?
You're in
the
Hi, morning.
Yes.
Afternoon.
You're not doing anything.
Afternoon.
So welcome, guys, and young Liam, Sir
Liam.
See, I know the child name and all because he have the child all over the internet. But I just want to say welcome to you guys. And how have you all been doing? I mean, in terms of work-wise, going crazy. Well, Liam, I know when Liam stole the TV remote and hid it for months. Yeah. That must have been really challenging for Kess. And Jerome, what have you been up to now that you can't go out and dance and sing and whatever it is what you'll be doing with your fabulous self? How are you making out?
No, you can't run hose as usual, Jerome. How we are
I want to take this moment to introduce Dr. Suzanne Burke, who's our co-host, and also empower her to jump in and ask questions about the whole economy of how comedy has been pivoting during this pandemic. All three of you all have been doing stuff, and I want to say that you all have gained followers, gained fans during this period. Am I wrong?
I would agree, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so it's actually been, in a kind of a weird way, a good thing.
Nah.
Well, I think that is the opportunity and the crisis all at the same time, right?
I think we're making best of the situation.
Right,
but,
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So it's what you do. What are the plans now to make, now that you have, I mean, the internet in this era has been kind of like the great equalizer, in that once you have content and it's good, you're going to get people following you. But then you have to also be immediately thinking about what you're going to do with the followers now that you have them, in terms of keeping them, maintaining them, giving them a wider range of things, and of course monetizing. Because one of the things we are going to have to deal with in the creative sector is the fact that so much stuff is on there for free, right? That when we enter what I call the post-COVIDian era, right, you are going to have to know how to charge and how to whatever. So can you tell us a little bit about springing forward? I was sharing with Lisa and the rest that TRANSILIENCE means to leap forward, right? So we are in a period of leaping, yeah? And tell me what your plans are to make that leap. How are we going to jump like a frog? What's the leap plan? What's the leap plan? You have to have a leap plan.
Who going first?
Go ahead,
Yeah, that's why I'm waiting for.
Well, my goal is to hit 10,000 followers. On Instagram. I don't really care about the other. Not that I don't care, but I focus on my Instagram because that's where I get the most interaction. So my goal is to hit 10,000 followers, and then
how many do you have now? How many do you have now?
5,100.
Okay.
So when I hit 10,000, I'm gonna delete my profile and see if I could do it again.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's my goal.
And the purpose of doing that is what?
To see if it's locked. If it was locked the first time.
Okay.
So if it worked the second time, then I'm gonna try to hit 20,000. And then from there, I hope that somebody would reach out to me for sponsorship, because I don't just do videos, right? I just do productions. Like I hope that I hope to go into film, so I just practice with my little skits and stuff. So I hope people would reach out to me, and the more money I get, the more extravagant my skits could get. That's all my goal is.
Right, but you have to be a little more proactive. Don't hope somebody. Hope is not a planner. So don't hope somebody reach out to you. You start reaching out to people based on what your feed is. So if you're able to delete and come back, then you can say, listen, I delete 10,000 people and I get 20,000 more, right? So don't ramp with me. So this is what I could do for your business, right? That's rank. So don't wait, right? You pivot, you make the leap. Because if you wait, you might be like Bob Marley and waiting in vain. So don't wait, leap.
All right, no problem.
What about you, Kess?
So for 2021, I have already 2 shows scheduled for 2021. Merchandise is something that I really want to focus more heavily on, because it's not something that I didn't have before, but I think the capital wasn't there for me to really do what I wanted to do. So I only had the t-shirts before, and the turnover from the t-shirts was used to pay for the last show. So I didn't take that money and say, well, all right, I'm gonna buy more t-shirts. I actually used that as my down payment for the last show, right? So
that's real jerseys, boy. You sell real jerseys.
I had like 500 t-shirts, yeah.
And you sell 500 jerseys?
Rotigang? Well, I didn't sell all. I gave away a few.
But
I gave away about 50.
Give away 400.
You sold 400. I can't sell 2 jerseys. I'm real proud of you, too.
So
Guess I can get a jersey, yeah.
But at the end of the day, right, even with the 5,000 followers that Jerome have, if you think about that, if you could get 500 from 5,000 people,
10%, 10%.
Come on, you can push that.
I I don't know about her, boy, because when I do in lives, I just have 20 people, which is much
That is
less
the
than
people that
10%.
online right now. That is people that on lives is not a true reflection of who will actually spend money on you. And it have people that have thousands and millions of followers and they can't get people to buy anything from them. It's
True.
really having that connection with people that will
For
give
them.
them the zeal to want to spend money on you.
Correct, correct. I don't think that's
Do you
happened
all,
to that yet.
do you all have a sense of who the people are that tune into your live or look at your stuff after, like a kind of segmentation of who they are? What kind of people looking?
So for me, I am and I've always been from day one. All of the comedians know this about me. I've always been very strategic and open about the fact that I believe it's important to monetize out the gate. I'm not doing this for the giggles alone. I have to put bread and butter on my table for my children. So everything comes with a strategy. And what I started looking at in the stratosphere of local comedy, we have other female comedians being Rachel Price and Nikki Crosby. And I said, how can I be different while at the same time being myself? So my following, I'm very observant of who I have following me.
Right.
I look, when I share a post, I look to see who is reacting, who's responding, my demographics. And so far, it has been on point based on my strategy, which is to attract a more female demographic, women around my age who are in their mid 30s to early 40s, career driven, may or may not have a relationship, may have children, maybe single parenting. But that is I want people who can relate to what I am going through, which makes sense to me.
Right.
So based on that and based on that same strategy, I started working earlier in the year on a book, a book of short stories. And I haven't completed it as yet because my grandmom passed away about a month and change ago.
So
And
sorry.
leading up to that was it was a traumatic process for her.
Challenging.
Yeah, she had a lot of challenges. And so I put it on hold, but I'm still going to be back on it shortly because I feel like it's important, yes, to have merchandise, but I want to have tangible things that my children can have the income from. So just like with V.S. Naipaul's estate, when you leave a book behind, you leave a legacy. No matter how long I'm going, I could continue to sell that book. And then I wanted to start looking at other avenues aside from just the shows, but stand-up comedy for me is important. It's very important, even if we don't have the infrastructure in terms of events and live events. I didn't get into stand-up comedy because I wanted to just tell her two jokes. I actually wanted to develop for myself so that I have an actual strat plan for myself in 5 years where I want to be, in 10 years where I want to be. And I started starting reaching out because I feel like I've penetrated locally, not to where I wanted, but enough that I'm recognized. So now I'm now starting to chuck my foot regionally to start networking, because networking is critical for all of us in getting other opportunities, getting gigs, getting gigs, getting opportunities to not just perform, but just to speak as well. Because I like motivational speaking. I like putting my voice out there. And going back to our original point, Louris, I didn't just stay with comedy for the last year. I started putting my foot more actively in advocating for mental health, advocating for domestic violence, rights for women. Again, things that all fall into our demographic and things that I think women can relate to allow me a little bit more leeway to start pushing myself for motivational speaking opportunities. I am looking to build my brand in a way where it becomes sustainable for me income wise. and I'm in merchandise. I would like to start eventually, but I feel like right now it is critical to make sure that the content pulls in enough people, and I can keep that stable. So like I've had my lives have been very consistent. I've had like 1,000 people tune in at times. It's been staying consistent. I always have the same like comments. I can't even keep up with the comments sometimes.
Well,
800
I think your consistency breeds that consistency in terms of audience following. You know, every time I come across one of your posts online, I always relate to it. I think I'm like squarely in your demographic. You know? As I always be like, yeah, that's true. You know, you posted something about cleavage the other day, and I was like, yes, that's so true. You know, so it's very relatable for me. You know, I just like to
Jerome, you could relate to the cleavage?
Jerome.
Maybe
Somewhat.
from the other side of the
Side.
picture.
Somewhat.
He's the guy
Across
going
the
like this
divide, across the divide.
to the cleavage.
So I'm hearing that everybody has different plans, different ways of moving forward. But it sounds like everybody has a plan or at least a strategy for using what's happening with the pandemic for harnessing your social media, which is the main, I guess, way we get out into the world right now. To increase your branding, to create more opportunities in the future for shows that you have coming up and merchandising. In Jerome's case, looking at developing and showcasing his filmmaking and film producing skills, with his whole creator Instagram, destroy Instagram, create another Instagram, Thanos type.
I love Jerome's comics. I love those videos, the comics. Jerome, I love those. You see the comic strips that you do with the voiceover from the stand-up. I admire that. I love those. I share those.
I just want to say that each one of you guys is doing something completely different and have a completely different like approach to comedy. Kess is a Christian comedian and he has a very strong footing, not just in the Lord, but in the Christian community. And we know them does like to spend money on Christian. And I think
we would hope so.
Fingers crossed. Anyway, God is in charge. But he has this audience base. Simmy's building her audience base among, as she's pointed out, her demographic. And then Jerome is building the young hot boy demographic. And I think that each one of us
right, HB demographic, we can't forget it.
All you want to hear a weird thing? My audience split down the middle between men and female. And it's from the ages of 25 to 34, like exactly 50%. So I don't know what's that.
Nah, boy, the girl them support me, boy. It's around 70% female on my pages. Yeah.
Which is weird.
I'm at 90% women and 10% men following.
Wow.
I'm so ashamed. I've never actually checked to see. I suspect because we brand ourselves as feminists, that most of our feminists and queer, that we have like a strong bent towards feminist queer kinds of audiences, but I've never really checked.
Yeah, I've checked women 35 to 55 are our biggest demographic.
Okay. I just started changing my thinking when it comes to social media, because before I used to want everybody to like me. And then I had a conversation with Simmy, great name by the way, the Sauce Boss. And now seeing that.
I know, when I started.
No, seeing that.
I regretted not doing something funny with mine.
Yeah, boy, I want to change mine. Wait, we could curse on this platform?
No, it's too late. Out anyway.
Right. But yeah, I just changed my thinking because I had a conversation with Big Brother Kivo. Today's his birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Kivo.
Birthday, Kivo.
Yeah. When I was telling them, like, so anytime I would post something, I'm real offensive, right? So sometimes I would post something and I would lose like 100 followers and it would hurt my feelings. And Kivo would be like, Dan, like what? Like those people were not going to stay with you anyhow. Like the people who stay with you, you gotta look at them as your clan, and your clan supposed to be a core audience who spread your stuff. If your core audience is 5,000, that's 5,000 die-hard fans. Because you could have 30,000 flakers and you post something and then they bust out on you, you know what I mean? So I started to change my mind when it comes to having people like me. So when I started to lose followers, and then it don't fees me as much.
That's great.
So, yeah.
I see Dr. Burke close she eyes and nodding she head like she in church and here in gospel.
So
Yeah, I
guys,
think it's important to know your audience. But first you have to know you know, and why you're doing this and the kind of stuff you're producing. And that is the 3 C's: consistency, collaboration, and continuity. So I'm hearing that in all of your stories. So that's good.
All right, guys. So we have to get rid of all 3 of you now. We love you dearly. We're so grateful.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
All 3 of you.
Wait, before we go, I forget a very important thing. So, Simmy, while you're on the show here, I wanted to invite you. Well, Kess, I invite you already, but I know what happened to you the last time. Well, you have a child. So,
yeah.
you know, yeah. So,
it's bad.
yeah. So, I started this comedy club with Mr. Errol Fabian. Not just so that, you know, we have somewhere to go and practice our stand-up, and it always have our audience, and we're not worried about if the joke's good or not, because it's a club. Like, you come and you pay $30. If you coasting on bad jokes for $30, something wrong with you. So you have an audience there, they pay a cheap price, and you come there and you try your material. We want to do it once a month now, then up it to twice a month, 4 times, you know, etc. And it is a space for all comedians. And Simmy, I would love if, well, it's not invite to one show, like is a comedy club. So I would love if, you know, you feel comfortable to just come whenever you want. And any comedians who listening here, any aspiring comedians, because all of us are established, just you know, message me anytime you all want to come through. The next show gonna be on the 5th of December on a Saturday.
Okay, great.
And you're gonna have comedians helping with the production, like Loris offered her services for free. And she's gonna be helping me produce, so you know, it's gonna be nice.
Pretty
Jerome, wrap it up. I have a wedding to go to.
Yeah,
that's it.
But thank you for the invite, Jerome, and we'll talk. Take care. Bye.
No problem.
Okay, guys. Bye. Thanks so much for joining us. Let me see if I could do this. Yes. Right. Great. Okay. So
we're gonna take the break.
Yeah, we're gonna take a very, very quick break here now before we bring in our wonderful guests on standby. We have Jean-Paul in backstage. We also have the amazing Rhoma Spencer backstage waiting to go on. But before we do that, we just wanna share with you guys a little tribute that we did for those that we have lost recently in our comedy world.
Every morning you wake in La Trinity, you're compelled to see or hear something that's funny. Every morning you wake in La Trinity, you're compelled to see or hear something that's funny. Just for instance, an Indian fella named John was waiting by a pipe in his village born. A police man said, "Hey, you old nasty man, put on something before sending for the prison fan." So I said that he was lucky to get that chance. He would have gone inside and put on a bathing pants. Well, he did put on something, this I no lie. You know, the gentleman went and put on a tie. Sometimes you might be passing across the square as a funny kind of conversation you hear. Just imagine a man reading a Guardian say, as making the push killer man, and the doctor's food on that very night. The man died from nothing else but the big snake bite. But it's something still he can't understand why food is still making investigation. So a woman who was listening attentively, so you shouldn't have that. And this one happened to a man named Bob, a night of a people, the parents club. He drank all his whiskey, brandy, and gin, and on the partition he started spitting. The manager came and said, "Hey gentleman, why the pants you spitting on the partition?" He said, "I am right, like you want to fight, but I will spit on the partition whole night tonight." Again the manager held him on his right hand. "Tell me boy, why you spit on the partition? Tell me boy, what you spit here for?" He said he really noticed not just spit on the floor. Then I heard this one up at Aruka. It was about the cricket in Australia. A fellow said the boys from the West Indies can play cricket like they eat in bread and cheese. Another fellow said he don't think they are the best, but he don't know how the France they lose voices. A Kayakunian is low when it's night.
Wonderful.
Thanks for that.
Lovely, lovely. I forgot to take off my mic. If you hear noise here.
How is your dad?
Come to pick up the daughter to go dance. It's still life living out. Yeah, I know.
Yes,
whole
that's
life.
right.
So guys, we had a lovely time talking to three young comedians making their way even in a pandemic. Now we have not so young comedians.
Established.
Who are more established. What's the word we use? Distinguished. That's the word. So first we're going to bring in one of our favorites, Jean-Paul. Welcome.
I guess good afternoon. It's morning here, but good afternoon.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome
Thanks for coming through.
Show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you on board. And I'm just going to bring her in. Are you ready, Rome? I can see you clearly. I'm just going to bring her in one time. This is both early in Toronto. And saying,
Wendy T. Dog.
Tarana.
Yeah, Tarana. You know, I don't get that.
Hi, Jean-Paul.
Yeah.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being so patient.
No, man.
In the waiting room. I know you all couldn't see anything, but I could see you all.
Not like we're outside in the cold. We're home.
Right.
Yes. And it's cold already, yeah?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yesterday was nice and warm,
Yes,
though.
agreed. Well, for November. Yes, for November.
Yeah.
Well, as I sit sweating in my living room in Trinidad, I just want to say welcome, guys, to the Caribbean Comedy Pivot episode of the Givin Trouble Show. And as I mentioned in our intro, Jean-Paul he's a Trini by birth and Canadian by boat.
Yeah.
And he has been, doing things during the pandemic, and we want to talk to him about that. But we also have Rhoma Spencer, who a lot of you Trinis will know from her time as a performer in Trinidad and Tobago. And she went to Canada and just blew up the whole of Canada again.
Canada.
Into Canada. So, welcome to both of you and thanks for joining us. And I also want to say on a personal note, thanks for also always supporting Lyrics and myself in our comedy journey. I know it's been rough sometimes, but, you all have always been there. And comes back again to what we've been talking about today, about community and the value of building that community among performers and among entrepreneurs within the creative sector. So thanks.
You're welcome. It's funny, just not to cut you off, which I am. It's funny you say that because when I first started comedy, I had the mentality, and I used to tell other comedians that comedy is not a team sport. So like when people, hey, how come so-and-so didn't book me on this show and whatever. And I used to have the mentality that comedy is not a team sport. But the more I grew up and advanced in comedy, I realized how much of a community it is and how much of a sense of community that you really need in order to succeed in this business. Because if not, it's really, really going to be a long
Tough.
and lonely road to carry all of that by yourself. And it's what's the saying? If you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, go with people. So
walk with others.
Yeah.
I never hear that, but I'm going to write it down now.
It's an African proverb. It's an old African proverb.
Let me introduce this. See what I'm telling you. This lady, Dr. Suzanne Burke. I know you may have heard of her, and she's an expert on the creative industries in the Caribbean, in general, but in creative industries in the Caribbean, and she's done like exercises to map the creative industries in Trinidad and Tobago. And so we brought her in here as a co-host, so she would ask questions about not just the practice of comedy, but the business side, because we're looking at the pivot. Yes. How have we been able to survive? Have we been able to survive, in this season where we can't do shows? Our core industry is going in people's face. And now you can't go in people's face. Literally half my face is blocked all the time. So how have we been able to pivot? So I'm handing you over to Dr. Burke so that she can, Suzanne, so that she can, take up that ball.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And Rhoma and I go back long ways.
Oh, God, long time.
Jean-Paul, it's lovely to meet you.
Pleasure.
Right? And especially coming from what we call the Caribbean diaspora, right? And your markets would, of course, include people from the diaspora living there in Tirana, right? And also people living here. So we were talking about making the leap. And what are the differences you see in terms of how you create now in this COVID era? And then what are your plans? What I'm calling your leap plan? What's your leap plan, right? In terms of maintaining your audiences, keeping audiences, growing new audiences. What's the opportunity that this moment presents, and how you're going to kind of make the best of the opportunity?
I'll let Rhoma go first. I'll be a gentleman.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. And thank you very much, Larissa and Lisa, for having me on. I know for me, remember, I straddled both worlds of being a theater practitioner and a comedian. And I want to say that the comedian takes second place, okay? However, in the last 2 years, I started to what I call, I will say, going mainstream. Going mainstream meant that I was appearing at such places as Yuck Yucks Comedy, and another one called Absolute Comedy and that sort of thing. That was my version of going mainstream, because prior to that,
Yuck Yucks is going mainstream, Rhoma.
I was part of something called the Nubian show run by one of Canada's leading comedian called Kenny Robinson, who people like Jean-Paul himself have worked under and have enough respect for him. So I made one appearance there. He liked me and then just keep bringing me back on to do shows. And then next thing I know, I was one of only 2 or 3 women on his 25th anniversary album, right? So I must say that in my 2 years of the attempt to go this mainstream, I think I did well. If I may say so myself.
You think so too?
But prior to that, I only worked within my Trinbagonian community. Yeah. And then, from other comedians seeing me and saying, wow, we never hear about you. What are you doing? And giving me, this kind of nudge to go forward to do this so-called mainstream thing. And I did just that. I reached out to Kenny Robinson through another Trini comedian named Mark Trinidad. We remember him as Mark de Montbron back home.
Yes.
Through Mark, and I got in. But I must say, as I said, it is it is second place to my theater. All right. What I find myself doing, how I pivot with my comedy, not being able to do live shows, is that unlike my brethren, Japol, he never called me to be on his show. He have some Trini show here with all the comedians and
But
so
remember, you are now mainstream. You in Yuck Yucks.
no, but he is in Yuck Yucks too. You know, he's all part of the mainstream. He more mainstreamer than me, as a matter of fact.
I'll get time to rebut this.
Anyhow, so while I don't do any shows going live, actually what people may not really know about Rhoma is that I am very shy, actually, and I hate the idea of going live, doing a show, so I've never done that. But what I do, how I pivot with my comedy during this time, is my one-liners and the quips that I put out on my What's on Your Mind on Facebook. So that something that I do a lot is that I will sit in front of my TV, in front of CNN or whatever, and whatever news is coming my way, I just turn that on its upside down.
On its head.
Yeah, with a sentence or two. And then, the amount of likes and comments and laughter it gets, I know that, okay, that's where my comedy, that's how I pivot. So it has people that look forward. I mean, about 1:00 this morning, somebody calls me and says, God, Rhoma, I want to sleep. You have me laughing and nearly dying, I'm like that sort of thing. So I know that people are seeing it, people are entertained by it, and that is how my comedy is able to flourish through just putting out whatever is on my mind, and trust me, it is always very it's funny, but it is taken from a place of reality. It's taken from and that's my comedy. I often tell people, I do not stand up and give a joke after joke. I take a situation and I talk about it, turn it on its head. And I always like to start first by poking fun at me.
At yourself, right? Exactly.
So that's how I pivot. But my art as a theater practitioner, I must tell you that I personally, COVID could stay, because the amount of opportunities that come my way, the amount of things just falling in my lap, I ain't asked for it. It just comes in my lap because of COVID, because these things didn't exist before. Prior to COVID.
That's right. So that's what I'm saying.
You had to hunt and look for it. You had to write grant, but people are just offering you things. And I think that has to do with the fact that a lot of the arts organization in Toronto, remember, they would have gotten their funding for stuff the year before. So with COVID, now, rather than, you're not going to give back the Arts Council the monies, but they have to divert it in ways. So they just come up with things and just say, okay, here,
you do this?
You got a residency to write a play, you got a residency, and this is what is happening to me. So I must say, I give thanks to the little COVID.
Yeah. Bless the COVID.
We go in a lockdown on Monday, but
I see.
Yeah, but it doesn't bother me. I mean, I'm on a lockdown anyway. I hardly ever leave my house to do. I mean, because I'm at that age. I do have pre-existing medical conditions, so I live in a kind of a little fear and paranoia. So I'm very cautious. So
understandably.
So lockdown ain't bother me too much. The only thing the only thing that I will that I fear is the notion of having to probably line up again to go into the supermarket. When we had opened back up, we had the luxury of being able to go into the supermarket, get your stuff, get back out. But now, only 10 people, 10 people alone could go in. So not looking forward to that part. But otherwise, COVID.
You're good.
I go. COVID, nice.
Yes. So Jean-Paul, tell us about your leap plan.
For the artists in Toronto or Canada, I don't know, but I must say that I feel every time an opportunity come my way, I think of my artist friends back home, and I feel for them, because I'm like, you know, they don't have this, you know. And it sucks, it's sad. I know over the years, Suzanne, you've been working on this notion of a cultural policy, and and every time, you know, things like when something like this happens, this is when I wonder, you know, how our cultural policy is working for us.
Yeah. If we have time, we could talk a little bit more about that, but certainly.
Yeah.
But let's give John Paul an opportunity to tell us about his leap plan and how COVID treated him. I mean, certainly there's a lot of content. There's so much stuff that you could make up because of COVID and people and so on, right? So there's that, but there's also the economic kind of ramifications of COVID on your bottom line. So let us have a little discussion about that. How COVID treats you?
For me, it's much like Rhoma was talking about. It's been good considering what we are going through. It's been really good. But I also think it's about your mentality and how you choose to. And that's literally the word that seems to be the operative word for me, is the choices, you know. And what COVID has done is forced everybody to realize the choices that they've made in life, as far as who you married, you know, whether you like whether you like your children,
whether you like yourself,
whether you like your job. You know what I mean? So what I think this has done for most people is force them to look at their choices to see whether they're happy with them, and hopefully make better choices, make more responsible choices for your own happiness. Because the thing that seems to be coming up for me, especially because I do what I've done to part of the things that I've done to pivot, is a lot of virtual corporate gigs. For corporations and companies and stuff like that, who can't have live, you know, whereas they would bring you in before and you'd be in a boardroom and it would be really awkward. I think the big buzzword is emotional wellness. And a lot of corporations are pushing emotional wellness. So what I've done, part of my leap is to harness and to package that, you know, emotional wellness, and pitch that instead of going, hey, you guys want a comedy show, you know, get some laughs, spirit, you know. It's like, hey, your workers are stressed and they're home and they might not be comfortable and they kind of have to homeschool kids. So here's a nice little way to you know, bring their emotional distress down. So I've come up with a company called We Laugh, and the WE stands for Wellness Equity. So that's what I'm trying to pitch out there as part of the leap, as well as much like Rhoma was talking about. I'm an introverted extrovert, and I don't like. And it's ironic that my job is to stand in front of people and for them to stare at me, but I hate being stared at. But I also have the luxury of being funny. See, I don't mind, because you're not in the same room.
Lisa staring at him.
Lisa not in the same room, so it's a different story.
But you know, most comics say that, right? That most comics are introverts.
Yeah.
So there's nothing, you know, strange there.
And it's so what I've started doing is a lot of social media, because content is king. That's what I've realized. Content is king, and Dr. Burke spoke about it a little earlier, to saying is, how do you monetize that? And that's ultimately what it becomes, is monetizing your content, because that's going to be the currency, because that's how people are consuming anything, you know, from jokes to music to seminars to whatever it is. So I've now, and to answer Rhoma, I had a show that I was doing. So at one point at the beginning of the pandemic, only because I thought the lockdown and pandemic was going to be all of 8 weeks in March. So I thought, you know what, by June we good. I back outside, me worry about nobody else. I will go live for 8 weeks. I good.
Oh, July, we're back in business.
Yeah. So at one point, I had 3 shows going. So I had a Sunday night show, a Sunday night comedy show called Minority Report, with other comedians where we do sketches and comedy and stand up and you know, say, all right, cool, let's watch this Netflix show, and then we'll have comments on it and have a little panel and whatever. So there was that. There was 2 writing sessions for that show, Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday night is a show that I still do with Hans Di Fantala called The Kitchen Table, which is still going very strong. And then Thursday night was a show I had called Red, White, and Laugh, which was me showcasing Trini comedians or comedic talent like Rhoma for the show, because I wanted people beyond my circle to get to know all these amazing, talented people that I've had the luxury of knowing over, the last few decades or whatever. But it has stopped. But Rhoma was definitely on that list, still is on that list. I just need to better manage my time to be able to do that, because I was doing Sunday night show, Tuesday night show, Thursday night show, writing on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and not seeing my family, even though we're in the same house. So it got, So I didn't want my pre-existing condition, which is my wife, to put me out in the middle of a lockdown. So I had to make some strategic, make some strategic choices. So so Red, White, and Laugh will come back, and for sure, there's no way I can't have Rhoma. And if it's one thing Rhoma's actually very, very humble in singing her own praises. Like she is a cultural icon in Trinidad and Tobago, from being a director, an actress, a producer, as she says, a mainstream comedian and thing now in Toronto. You know what I mean? So she's very, very humble in downplaying or downgrading, what her actual contribution, your contribution to the entire arts community, which is fantastic. You know what I mean? So to be shocked that Kenny would call you back, you already had that training. You just repurposed or repackaged what you already knew or know to make it viable for a completely different audience. And that's what artists do. It's like sometimes we're comfortable doing it and sometimes we're not comfortable doing it. But that's been my entire thing is being comfortable with the uncomfortable. Panic was my number one mantra at the beginning was panic is not an option. I can't afford to panic. I have a wife, I have 2 kids, I have a house I still want to live in. So it's like, all right, cool. How do I make the leap? So the leap I've made is putting out more content on social media, which I never really did before. I've embraced it almost to a fault. Coming up with, this wellness equity company where I approach things, and I do a ton of virtual shows. And it's amazing how many people now that I might meet out, even though we don't get to go out as much. It's like one of the first things everybody will say to me is, "What, man? Every time I turn on social media, you're everywhere, man. I see you're killing it, man." And I'm not doing it for that, but it's actually amazing. And to announce here, I mean, people will find out. So I found out this week, and I honestly think it's because of how often I've been and how consistent I've been on social media and online, and my presence has grown. I just got the call from the Montreal Just for Laughs Festival. So in December, I have to TV record a gala set.
A segment, right?
Yes, because they couldn't have the in-person festival. So now I'm taping a gala set for the CBC, which is like Canada's TT. It's like Canada's TTT. Yeah, I mean, so So
in fact, the CBC set up the TTT. The people from CBC, they were the advisors to set up TTT.
And that's why you have Doctor.
That was in, the
that's why you have Doctor in front of your name. You know reality. So, but again, I think it's because of the leap and the pivot and the choices that I continue to make, which aren't always comfortable. But getting comfortable with the uncomfortable is probably the best thing everyone can do, because, as you said, it's going forward. I almost don't like the term the new normal. I think normal is whatever is happening. There is no new. It's whatever it is. It's just I mean, it's not like I get married. That's the new normal. Married, no, that's normal. That's the progression of not being. You know what I mean? So, and it's not post-COVID. It's just this is where we are in this time. Yeah, I mean, nobody said the new normal when the Spanish flu hit or when SARS hit. It's like, boy, we're living in this new normal with SARS, but it's just this is it. This is where we are. Just adapt, make the change. And sometimes it's easier for some than others. So I wish this was funnier, but
can I just to say congratulations on that amazing gig. And
thank you.
Also, you're making stand-up comedians look really bad with all this hard work. I mean, we're supposed to be people who sleep all day and smoke a lot of weed, get drunk, and just like come on stage.
Right.
Bailey's in my coffee, girl.
You're making us look bad. Come on.
I still doing all that. That. But mortgage payments come every month and they don't stop. Mortgage payments don't rest for COVID.
They don't care about that. Exactly.
There's no new normal for mortgage, you know. There's normal, the new normal.
They don't pivot from that, right? So I wanted to kind of take up from some of the things you said, Jean-Paul, and thanks for that, right? Is that this notion of, I want to touch on two things. The first is how you balance, the overworking, because this new format or this exaggerated format that we now have, being online and so on, right, can create a kind of burnout. And for comedians, you have to learn how to manage that. You need to know when to stop, because your creativity needs space.
Correct.
So I want you to talk a little bit about that. But I also wanted you to talk a little bit, and both of you, both Rhoma and Jean-Paul, the notion that there is, even though this is the new, as you say, thing, you have built a foundation of consistency, of continuity. So Rhoma, you're saying, well, I'm a theater practitioner, but the skills that you acquired as a theater practitioner are easily transferable to what you're doing, right? So there has to be a consistency. I keep saying the three things: collaborate, consistency, and continuity, right? That you build your career on. So when something like this happens, and next see a crisis, right? You are able to leap. You are able to pivot, you are adaptable, you're flexible. So talk a little bit about how all your training and stuff prepared you for this moment and will prepare you for other things that hit you in the past. So those are two things: the prevention of burnout, what you're doing to create that balance, especially for the younger comics listening, right? And then talk about how you're able, your consistency, your use of the 3 C's, how that was able to help you really rise to this moment, this opportunity.
Well, for me,
Rhoma, you want to go first?
Well, I guess
I could go if you want me to go. That's small thing.
I thought that you because you just finished talk, you might want to just let the
breathe, to drink some of his coffee with Bailey's in it.
So you're trying to talking too much now. You sound like my wife living.
No, I ain't saying that. But you go ahead because I need to formulate my thoughts.
Yeah, no scene. So what I've done to prevent the burnout is exactly what I was talking about earlier, where when I thought it was only going to be 8 weeks, it was like ding, ding, show, this, that. And then I realized that wasn't going to be sustainable for anybody, not for me, not for my home life, not for my thing. So what I then did was, all right, what can I pull back on and repurpose later? So as long as I'm having an online presence on something or some things, I don't have to have 4 things happening at once, plus do an online show. Plus, I was still doing live shows because in the summer, a lot of comedians were doing outdoor shows. So we'd do it on a patio, we would do it in a park, that kind of thing. So what I did was repurpose my time. So kids, especially now that school is back, kids are in school online. So so while they're at school, I'll try to do whatever work I need to do as far as research, prep, writing, getting myself together, because the wifey's also working in the day. And so they know, so we have a calendar on the fridge and it's like, okay, cool. I have a virtual show here. I have kitchen table every Tuesday from, this time to this time. And then outside of that is family time. So the kids, we eat dinner together all the time. We have our little conversation, you know what I mean? Very, very Huxtable, minus the pills. Yeah. That was implied with the pills.
The Preludes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So and then also we watch something pretty much every night, whether it be a couple episodes of a comedy show. We all found something that we all like comedically. Whether it be Fresh Prince, whether it be Modern Family, whether it be Brooklyn Nine-Nine, whatever it is. Or we'll watch a movie, but we do it together as a family. So at least we try to maintain that connection so that there's no burnout and that everyone feels included in this entire situation of what's happening to the entire world. It's not something just happening to you. So you can't be like, boy, 2020 real jamming me, boy. No, everyone is going through this at the same time. So you need to be respectful of that, but you also need to be respectful that people handle stress differently. So I don't expect people to do what I do. I could only be responsible for myself and for my family and the people that live within the four walls of this house. And outside of that, I could only try to be empathetic toward people's situation and not judge anyone because they feel is a 5G conspiracy. And since they put up towers, that is what causing COVID. And when you wear a mask, they're trying to take away this Illuminati and da. And if that's what you feel, hey, cool. But I don't have time. I don't have energy to waste on that. I have energy that I need to conserve and preserve to make sure that my family is safe.
It's healthy.
And we get through this emotionally strong, physically strong, and sexually strong. Because,
amen.
I mean, you can't be daddy if thing ain't working. And I mean, so, a little too much information.
Well, for me, I found that.
Go ahead, Rhoma.
Yeah, for me, I found that this time I've been able to I've gotten super creative.
Agreed.
In that I find that because you have all this time on your hands now, staying at home, not having to go out to do stuff, you find that you at least for me, I needed to keep my mind active. And the only way I could have done that is by writing. So I haven't been really like doing any kind of writing in any big way, like sitting down having to write, let's say, a play in probably over 10 years. And I find that at this time, again, as I said, remember I straddle both worlds. When a company gives you funds to do a playwriting residency, to do something, write a play, write what have you, you're forced to now have to, okay, so money pass, change pass. So you have to, even though the inspiration isn't there, you have to actually force yourself to come up with an idea, come up with something to start to write. And I found myself in this time, almost, it was easy to come. Yeah. And that has to do with the fact that I said you have this extra free time, all this free time. What are you doing with it? And for me, as I said, my creativity turn up. Let's put it this way. Creativity turn up in the ways not only as a writer, it also turn up in ways that I didn't even think of. I create in the month of June. We didn't have Pride, so the one of the major theater companies here, queer theater companies here, Buddies and Bad Times, put out a call for people to celebrate Pride in their space. So you could have a performance on your balcony, on your front step, on the pavement, what have you. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to do something on my pavement in front of my yard. With two dance artists. I'm not a dancer. All right. I'm an actor. I'm a director. I'm a playwright, but never a dancer. But I found, as I said, there's this kind of this extra terrestrial, I will call it, urge to create out of the box. So I come up with this idea called quarantine. where I work with 2 dancers to
name.
present a performance outside my house on the pavement. There's this beautiful architectural, artistic monument. I said I'm going to animate that space in movement, and we created, as a with these 2 dancers, this piece for it was 30 minutes long, okay, and it was phenomenal, and I kind of pat myself on the back because I said prior to COVID, there's no way I would have been doing anything like that. It's what you call what you call physical theater. Why doing in the middle of physical theater? I'm not a dancer, as I said. I can move. I understand the dance vocabulary and all that, but the ability to come before 2 dance artists, not just dancers, but dancers who can sing, dance, and act, to come before these 2 bodies to impart your idea, and for them to then turn that around in movement. That to me was a leap, a big leap for me to work in that medium, And as I said, in addition to the performing arts, I also dabble in the culinary arts. So next thing you know, there's a cultural bazaar in my community. I submitted. I said, well, I want to be one of the vendors, and I was selling corn soup and doubles. And next thing you know, my booth became the go-to booth for doubles when they would come. It was something that happened every Wednesday, and again, there's would he ask I would prior to COVID, would he ask Rhoma Spencer would have been selling doubles? Could you imagine? So these are some of the things that to me the pandemic has brought on for me as an artist. I'm able to work in the culinary arts, the performing arts, and the comedic side. As I said, it takes the way in which I approach that at this time is through the things that I say and do. As I said, I will sit in front, especially CNN. I was sitting in front of CNN during the time of the elections run up, and and I must say, and I'm sure Japol, you would agree with me that the GOP, the Trump and his shenanigans is just so much
greatest reality show. Greatest reality
so much material.
It surpassed Game of Thrones as far as.
Oh my God! To the point where
it is insane.
To the point that it's becoming now tiring. It's
as far as reality.
Yes.
It's what we call post-reality. It's not even real anymore. It's not even surreal.
Reality.
It's magic. It's not magic. It's not magic realism.
Magic realism.
I say the time done. I the time before. I in charge of that. Right? Way over time. We're having such a good time. Yes.
And I have an next meeting.
Time in Poland. But here's one thing I'll say. Last things I'll say, because I know we got to get out of here. As an artist, what I appreciate about this time, and thank you, Dr. Burke, you've been able to articulate some of the things that we just jumble up in our head, which is fantastic. But what I'm always most excited about as an artist, as someone who creates, is what I've taken solace in. Nice cat in the back there, Lisa. But anyway, so you need to lift your camera.
Don't touch your pills. Don't touch your pills.
Lift your camera up. Okay, yeah, pet down. They're all over the place. Great art comes out of crisis, and what I look most forward to is the art that comes out of this, like in the next few months, kind of thing, from music to painting to visual to comedy, and that's what I look forward to, as well as Rhoma's first comedy album called Coronavirus. That is her first comedy album, so look out for Coronavirus.
Of which, of course, my boy Japol is the executive producer.
Throw it back. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I ain't that. If you're for real, I'm for real. Huh?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So guys, you
No,
heard it
for
here
real,
first
for real.
The Rhoma Chronicles.
Coronavirus.
I love it.
Coronavirus.
I love it.
Coming to you soon.
But I thank
Yeah.
thank you, Lisa, thank you, Lyrics, and thank you, Dr. Burke, and thank you, Rhoma.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. And I look forward to the when you have the show. We call it
Red, White, and Laugh.
Red, White, and Laugh. I look forward to sharing. And
Yeah,
I
have to have you.
And you know, I must pong a little bit because you know, there's a show called Every Mother's Day that they have. Jean-Paul and a brother named J. Martin.
Trinidad versus Jamaica Mother's Day Comedy Clash.
Yeah. And I know prior to this notion of going mainstream, Jean-Paul will only call me when some other comedian who's supposed to represent Trinidad, like maybe a Rachel Price or whoever is a no-show, then they'll call Rhoma, and then Rhoma will come and do the show and mash up. All right? So
it's because you was an actress.
You know, so
you was an actress, you ain't a comedian.
So while I was never ever part of the publicity, Rhoma Spencer gonna be there. You know, I will be called and asked, you know, oh God.
Your mic is breaking up. I can't hear you, Rhoma. Your mic is a little
Is it breaking up for the rest of you? Is it breaking up for the rest of you?
No.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's breaking up because I'm ponging, you know. So I don't know. I hope by May this year we will indeed have a Mother's Day, you know. What do you call it? The Trinidad versus
Jamaica's Comedy Clash.
Yes, and I would be indeed a featured one of the acts, and not also called for, you know, also ran.
Since you want to be so slack, it could be just you. Just you by yourself on stage for 2 hours by yourself.
Damn
Since
well,
you want to be so
I could do that.
Slack with yourself.
She could do a one-woman show. She has done that.
Trust me.
Comments.
Exactly.
I have to say.
So anyhow, Jean-Paul, I love you, darling. You know,
you too, baby.
And Suzanne, lovely to see you. Loris and Lisa, thank you. Great work what you're doing with Femcom TT. Please continue to do it. And for the younger ones who I saw, that Simmy,
Sauce Boss,
I love she too bad.
Yeah, I love her. She's actually done the Red, White, and Laugh. But anyway, that's
she does. Wow.
Now you want to get licks. Well, you want to get more licks, not ponging. You need to get beat up.
Yeah. And that will be done offline. Anyhow. So thank you, and God bless. I have a next meeting at 1:00, of which I'm supposed to make some pies, and I hope I already have it set there already. But I hope
I'm putting out some doubles in.
Half an hour. I have half an hour to fry it.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Oh, that was a ton of fun. I have to say, the back of my head is hurting me. That's how I know that was a ridiculous amount of fun. Oh my goodness.
I don't know what the back of your head has to do with that, but I want to say again, thanks to the audience who joined us. I want to thank Suzanne Burke and let me see, Kess, Jerome, Simmy, Rhoma, and Catapult.
Hey!
I remembered.
Yes, about damage as we feared.
Yeah, not quite. And I also want to thank again, especially Catapult, the Catapult Arts Program, Arts Grants, and Fresh Milk, Kingston Creative, and American Friends of Jamaica, through whom, we got the funding to be able to do the showcase. Not that we paid anybody, but it would be nice for us to get paid for a change. And yes, and on behalf of Femcom TT, thanks, and we hope to keep working to, as we said, comedy is saving lives out here, as Jean-Paul was saying, it's making people laugh is a job that helps to relieve stress and keep us going, you know. So let's give it the value and attention that it's worth. And thanks for joining us. And on behalf of FEMCOM, thanks, Dr. Burke.
Thank you. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and thank you for having me. And these conversations are really important to keep going. Continuity, collaborate, and consistency. More power.
All right.
Guys, I just want to say thanks to all the people who joined us online today. It was an extremely long show. We clocking in at an hour and a half. But we had a great time. It was such an interesting discussion. I learned so much. I just want to thank both of you for being here with me and for the audience for viewing our regular schmegular Givin Trouble show with just Lisa and I don't know if when we could tempt Dr. Burke back again because she's super busy, but we'll do our best. But our regular show resumes this week, Tuesday and Thursday at 12 noon. You know, you can always catch up on Facebook later. And we always have the best shows of the month on YouTube at the end of the month. So guys, thanks so much for joining us. Goodbye from Suzzy, Lisa, and Lyrics.
Bye.